Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well on this day. I don't know if you've had your vaccination yet, but if not, you're clearly not bribing the right people. It is lovely to see so many of you on as ever, and welcome to HomeGames. This will be the second last HomeGames of 2020. We'll do one next week. I haven't decided what to do with it yet. We haven't got a guest booked, so if anyone's got any bright ideas, but we'll probably do a review of the year of some sort or another. And we'll see how it goes. But we've got a blinder of a session planned today with the man who is on my right as I look at this, and I think is on your left, Mr. Justin Cash from Money Marketing. Say hello, Justin.
Hello.
To all the boys and girls. It's lovely to have Justin on. We've never had a member of Money Marketing's august paper of record of the financial services industry. We've never had you on before, so this is very exciting for us. I imagine it's also very exciting for you.
Privilege, absolute privilege, sir.
Yeah. It's hard to tell just by looking at you, but I think I can discern a little bit of excitement in there. The usual stuff. Alistair McQueen's on for the first time today, so we've got at least one or two first-timers, so I better do the usual stuff. Lots of you will be very used to this, but if you've got any problems with sound or vision, there's a wee link. Click that and your feed will magically resolve itself or not, but if it doesn't, there's nothing further I can do for you and you're just on your own. But we'll post this up on YouTube later anyway. I hope everybody's kind of doing well and had a good day. We've got about 45 minutes together, and it's a great chance, I think, to ask one of the sector's foremost journalists, not just an editor, but a journalist as well, about the role of the media, what's going on in his world, how things are changing, and also what he's seen this year in the sector. And we're in the kind of looking forward to 2021 now. Also, there've been a couple of relatively big stories in the last couple of days, so you never know. We might end up picking up on some of those. As ever, the chat is open, which lots of you have taken advantage of already, which is I know we say it every week, right? But it's really nice. It's really, really nice that people come on, don't just sit there and go, all right, fat lad, impress me. They actually do tippy-tappy away. I love that. And if you've got any questions you want to make sure that I see for Justin, pop them in the Ask a Question box, which is at the bottom of your screen. You will also see a little green thing. This is one of these times which we do pretty constantly now, but we're haranguing you to see if you'd help us out. We're doing an ESG bit because everybody is, but that's not why we're doing it. We want to kind of cause a bit more trouble with it and get inside it a wee bit more, and we would love to hear from you. You don't have to say nice things about what's happening with ESG. We're interested in the issues inside that sector rather than isn't it a big theme and aren't people interested in it. We know that. It's some of the more detailed stuff that we would like to see. As I say, this will go up on YouTube later on. If you are popping on there, do check out some of the old episodes, and we get to personalize our channel more if more of you subscribe, and we can't really do very much with it at the moment until we get us X hundred subscribers. I'm not sure how many it is. So if you do like this stuff and you do visit the YouTube channel, would you be nice enough to click subscribe? I don't think anything happens beyond it then shows you what we're done, and it basically causes you no pain and allows us to do some fun stuff. That's pretty much it, I think, in terms of housekeeping. So let's dive in a bit quicker than we normally do, but I think pretty much everyone's on that's coming. So Justin, how are you?
I'm very well, sir. It's an interesting time for us journalists as well as everyone else. It's a bit of a shift. Normally we're just shouting at each other over a desk about what's breaking. Now it's 18 different Teams threads. So an adjustment, but a positive one in a lot of ways.
I guess, yeah, because we found, and I imagine advisors find or providers and stuff find, you tend to be working on kind of relatively chunky things, so you can tuck yourself away for a half day or whatever else. But a newsroom's a newsroom, and something comes from that noise and that tension of people shouting at each other, doesn't it?
Yeah, everyone has different ideas, everyone's got different contacts, and yeah, we produce the weekly print mag and stuff, and that's obviously a bulky thing. I need to lock myself away for a while and literally just edit pages for a bit. But apart from that, it's competitive out there. We want to be first, we want to have the most interesting content, and we've got to fire on all cylinders for that. weirdly, when I say, oh, it's actually been a bit of a struggle to put the print edition together, people go, oh, can't you just do that through editing PDFs? It's like, we tried highlighting and moving things around, and it's just a faff saving that file, putting it in the right folder, then having to sub look at it. I literally just, old school, still the best we've learned in a lot of our print process. Literally just scribble some marks on a page, throw it over to someone else. That's often a lifesaver.
Yeah, it sounds very like trying to save client documents down into a client portal from a back office and from a platform and stuff as well. So I suspect people will be vibing with you a little bit there. Now, let's talk a little bit about how you got into all this, because almost everybody we have on, when we ask about financial services and how did you get started, it's a boring question, but we've got to start somewhere. Most everyone goes, including me, oh, I was going to do this, and then there was this kind of hole in the road and I fell into it, and then there was financial services in it, and I'm still here for whatever reason. Tell us a little bit how you got going in journalism, first of all, and into financial services journalism. How did that all start?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in the news and in broadcast and in current affairs more generally. I wouldn't describe myself as a particularly political person in terms of I'm not campaigning, but I'm very interested in what's gone on, and that would have led me when I was going to university. I was like, oh well, careers that have that kind of bent. Lawyer, don't want to be a banker, don't want to be a politician, don't want to be a lawyer. And let's leave some options open, maybe teaching, something like that. Ended up doing politics, philosophy and economics at Durham University. Started writing for the student paper, doing a student radio show. Did a bit of work kind of promoting the magazine on campus. And I was like, you know what, I like this journalism lark. Did a master's in investigative journalism at City in London. And I started more and more thinking that I wanted to do serious journalism, business stuff. I'm not really someone who reads a lot. A lot of journalists they are ego hogs sometimes. They like a bit of the profile. If you see a lot of the gossip you do and columnists. I never wanted to picture myself as a columnist or a commentator. That for me, that's not really journalism. That's something different. That's being a writer. That's being a loudmouth. I mean, fine. It's very entertaining, but I always wanted to go down a more technical investigative type of route. Like many people, then you just look at what jobs are open after you have that degree. And I picked up my first a magazine called Legal Week, writing about law firms. Basically, what money marketing is for financial advisors, Legal Week is for the legal profession. We cover the movements in that. Taught me a lot. If you can get a story out of a lawyer, you can get a story out of anyone. That's what my old boss used to say. But then I thought, law's fine to cover, but it's not the most exciting sector. I was always interested in how professional services firms worked, but finance is really my thing, is what I was just interested in outside of that. So when the job at Citywire came up, decided to jump on that. Then vacancy came up at Money Marketing. They said hi, and I said sure, and the rest is history.
Very much so. Oh, listen to this. You're even getting compliments already, Justin. Money Marketing is one of the better news sources that Neil reads. I did come up with a marketing line for a platform once, which was considerably less shit than you may have been led to believe, which they didn't go for inexplicably, but that feels a little bit like that from Neil, so that's great. That's great. So you're right, it is a funny old time, and not just because of COVID, right, with the shift online and all that kind of stuff. How do you see the kind of health of I suppose your ability to put interesting stuff together and to get inside stories and all that stuff in our particular sector?
Yeah, I've actually loved it. I mean, this has essentially just given us all in the media a bit of a boot up the backside to transition, not just to having an online news website that has a couple of headlines you click on, but for having a bit more of a full service multimedia package of interesting content. That's from webinars to podcasts to research papers to audience surveys and infographics and all of that stuff. So that's what I think that is the way forward. I mean, commercializing it is obviously very difficult. I'm sure a lot of the people on this call will realize, but I think also a lot of the sector is realizing that there is value in this stuff. People are really engaging with it. And do you want to buy just a cheap billboard ad on a website, or do you want to be the person who's known as a thought leader, that's on that webinar, that's at that event or that breakfast briefing, or has run this amazing podcast series or infographic package, or has got behind this great piece of research that someone like Money Marketing has done? I think we are slowly but surely starting to see a lot of the old school asset managers as well picking up on that, because what print mags and what kind of traditional online media let you do was pitch stuff, right? Here is a fun boom advertorial, or just an ad in the print section. That's just not what advisors want to see, and that's not what's working for exposure for companies. It's what you stand for. It's cultural stuff. I mean, a lot of the people who do this best are the providers who don't talk about what their core service is at all. They just align themselves to something like diversity and something. And we've seen a lot of stuff come up about that. They're not selling a diversity product. They're positioning themselves as the friend of the advisor and a go-to company and a great person to do business with. And actually that works so much better for me as a journalist. I don't have to stop people trying to shoehorn in their stuff. I don't try and have to devise content formats that essentially soft play that as much as I can get away with. It just naturally happens if you're doing your journalism in a different format.
And do you, well, I mean, Money Marketing's still got a print title, I guess, but all round is print's in a bit of a difficult position, I guess, with the costs involved and people not particularly ready to pay for it. Do you kind of regret that, do you think, or are you just looking forward?
I personally love having the print. I think one of our USPs is that we do this 3,000 word cover story every week, and we really get into a really meaty issue that's going on that week. That's often informed by, say, some polling work we've done with our audience, or a big data trawl or an accounts analysis or something like that we've done. And actually, we get great feedback when we survey our readers about the print. It's not. I don't think the shift away from print has been led by the readers wanting something different. You look at the average age of advisors, but also look at yourselves during lockdown. I know that I have. I've appreciated print products even more. I've signed up for a new stuff, got a bit more time to read them. They're a nice experience, and you don't have to have your content segmented by ads or pop-ups to sign up to this or other things that we might need to put on the same page. Something you can sit back and enjoy. I would say if you want that to survive, you want us to be able to keep giving that to you for free as well, because we do give it to you free, and it's not. And printing costs have really gone up. So it's a combination of things. It's that sponsors aren't as willing to come behind print products, but it's also that I think the cost of our paper jumped 9% or something like that last year, and that's not that and that's just the market for buying in pages. That's nothing to do with with anyone else. If you want us to be able to keep doing it for free, then let people know about it. Pass it around, talk to people about it, talk and make sure that we can find some kind of way to make it viable.
And I guess one of the things, if you're not kind of involved in this stuff all the time, I think a lot of people misunderstand or just I've never thought too much about the kind of commerciality of the models when you're basically funded by advertising and sponsored content and that kind of stuff, and yet you've still got to weave a kind of journalistic road through all that stuff. So how do you keep that? Because one of the things that I think people throw unfairly, because I know how hard all the trades work actually on not letting this happen, but how do you stop commerciality influencing what you write?
I think if you take it back to pure commerciality, actually you don't have a commercial incentive to allow sponsors too much sway over what you do, because then people will get turned off the brand and they'll stop reading, and you cut off your nose to spite your face. If you sometimes when it might have happened by accident that some of the tiles on our website just haven't refreshed or something like that, so we look like we're a bit more sponsor heavy than we should. Someone's going to email me about that, within about 10 minutes. So actually, it's completely in my interest as well as everyone else's to make sure that exposure is fair. I think there's a lot of misconceptions as well about how we make that money and where it comes from. People go, oh, you just it's just events where you just get fund managers to pitch to everyone. So, well, actually, the events business, because there's so much competition in there, that barely washes its face anymore. Yes, back in the day, you used to be able to charge. People were willing because you didn't have such a predominance of network models and VI and because and CIPs and models and people outsourcing to DFMs, single strat fund managers. It made sense for them to pay a lot of money to come up and speak to a room of advisors. Now it doesn't. The rates on that have gone down, and also we're aware that turns people off, so we can't book that many of them. So I think that's a criticism that I feel isn't fair in our events business, because I feel like we do work really hard to try and. I put it this way: I could make more money on those events if I wanted to. I could stack a few more sponsors in there. I choose not to for a lot of reasons.
We've obviously put events on, and one of the things we do in the background is help some companies with their marketing and PR and all that kind of stuff, Marlock's side of the business. And sometimes you have to physically restrain somebody that you've got to sponsor something, which was a good thing for them to do. You've got to stop them standing up for 20 minutes and talking about how great their product is on the basis that it'll just piss everybody off. Not least you, I would imagine, because you will then be fielding another 40 of those calls saying, why did you let this Muppet up to do that? But it's quite hard to stop chief execs of whoever talking their own book,
Yeah, but again, the best ones don't talk their own book. Not saying this for any reason except that I liked what they did with it. But I think Aegon had a very good strategy this year and last, and what they did. They go, okay, it's nothing to do with our product line, but we're gonna align all of our commentary and all of our presentations around regulatory costs and levies. We know it's such a big issue for advisors, and they were like the only ones, or they were at least the first to come out and say providers should pay more towards the FSCS.
Yeah.
How much better is that than coming out and saying, here's why our multi-asset fund's better than someone else's multi-asset fund?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I can get, and we do that, we go, right, how can I make a thematic session that you want to talk about, Mr. Sponsor, that isn't related to your product? For example, our latest conference, financial wellbeing, had a panel on that a provider wanted to get behind. I wrote that panel and I put it in the agenda. I didn't know any sponsor was going to come behind it, and then they did. That's the kind of innovation that I want to see. I want to see providers thinking a bit more cleverly about how they can support content that's great for advisors and topics that they really want to hear about, rather than just fundy stuff.
Yeah. All that said, in the kind of core title online, eyeballs are kind of important. And Neil did ask the question, so I'll just put it to you straight about finding the balance between providing informative views without getting clickbaity. Because you do, there's a lot of content out there in a lot of places, and you do need people to go, oh, that one, I'll read that one in my lunch hour, instead of, for example, coming on a HomeGames and watching that, which is what they should do. So how do you ruin my webinar eyeballs by getting eyeballs on your stories?
Well, what they should do is watch HomeGames and then go straight to the money marketing website. Obviously,
I feel certain that most people here will do that.
There's room enough for everyone. What I would say is that we're starting to look more and more at the stats. I mean, again, media's been historically bad at actually not reviewing itself as a business and what works and what we're spending time on that we shouldn't be spending time on, what content people actually want to read. And you look at that, and actually, clickbait stuff really doesn't have that long a tail. I'd liken it to that lovely iron brew that you're drinking now. It's a lovely sugary hit, but it doesn't really sustain you as a business for
sugar-free
for very long.
Made in Scotland from girders.
And actually, we look at the stuff that does best. It's the stuff that's a bit more investigative, a bit more exclusive, because it's the kind of stuff where you can't read it anywhere else. And people go to their friends, oh, this is quite impressive. And they send it an email, or they come back to it over and over again because it's got loads of new information. It's a really deep story. I think you're really starting to see what's called evergreen content as being something that people put a primacy on. Maybe it's not a news story. It's a resource. It's a guide that people will multiple visits and will visit over a look, that it's still relevant in 5 years' time. And so you just spread out your silly clickbait traffic you actually do exactly the same thing with something that people find useful.
That makes sense to me, and it's a different title and a different stable, but and gone now. But money management's annual SIP survey was used. I mean, it was a proper resource for the industry, you know. And Craig that works with us, poor old Craig, used to have to pull that together and phone everybody up, and then everybody would scream at him because something wasn't right. Like, it's just me doing this. I'm not Deloitte, you know. But these things, you're right, there is the potential to have a genuinely useful resource. And I guess if you're somebody buying space or you've got a media budget, then you know there's opportunities to get in with that kind of stuff. And I'll come back to some of that stuff. We've got some questions coming up here. One from Mr. McQueen, who just turns up blithely this first week and then thinks he can just ask questions. I ask you, the cheek of the man. And he asks, I'm going to ask you this even if you don't want to answer it. Tom Selby, Ian Anderson, Broadbeck, who is your least favourite former trade journalist?
Ooh. Politician's answer on this one.
Of course.
No, I'm gonna avoid it by saying Tom Selby's my least favourite, because I ran into him at a gig the other day and he knew the band. And then afterwards we were like, yeah, let's meet up. And then I get to meet the band and he never texted me back. That is why Tom Selby is my least favourite of those.
Selby all over, man. Selby. You can never trust the guy. As a point. And there did seem to be that kind of trend for a while where people were kind of leaving journalism to go provider side. And I guess there's some money issues and all that kind of stuff in there. Do you think that's a kind of motorway that people are going to keep trucking down, or do you think there's enough juice in the journalism to actually keep people interested and keep them there?
Yeah, but back what I said about earlier about finding different ways to get your message and your product out, I think that ex-journos, there's obviously a clear reason for them going to be PRs, but I think you can only have so many PR roles. What I see now is people going into content roles in-house investment managers. They'll be the people who will write their guides for financial advisors. They'll ghostwrite fund manager blogs. If it's their Christmas top tips or whatever, they just do, or they run their podcast and whatever. It's not journalism in the truth, but there's a lot of hiring activity at the moment from either agencies that create content on behalf of people who sell to IFAs, or in-house roles within asset managers, pension providers themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what else have we been asked here? Here's interesting from Darren. Is there space for a paid-for magazine, print or online, that has little to no paid provider content? So I guess, some of the most, I don't know if you say popular in the light of 15, 20,000 advisors, but amongst the kind of Twitterati and all that kind of stuff, there is a movement for advisors to properly pay for stuff and to have stuff that's free from provider influence. What about that kind of model? Do you think there's enough in there?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is I think that for some reason advisors see a giant gulf between consultancy type stuff and between what journalists and media organizations do. When everyone can go, advisors are starting to pay for stuff. I mean, I just don't think we're there yet to have them pay for, say, a subscription to money marketing. I would love them to. I think the quality is worth it. I think it would allow us to do more great things. But at the end of the day, when you've still got 3 or 4 other competitors that would probably keep a free model, then fine. I mean, my kind of big idea strategically going forward may well be some kind of premium subscription where because we do a lot of like special reports and big data stuff like that SIP survey that we end up being size and shape of the market, salary centers, DFM, and platform availability and things like that we've done are a really chunky piece of work. Yeah, fine, you can read regular money marketing for free, but if you want this other stuff, then you might have to be part of the package, and maybe that gives you access to our breakfast briefings, or you get to come to the event that's the launch of the white paper, something that I would love us to move towards that model, because I think that, kind of as I said earlier, clickbait isn't really good for anyone. I want us to be seen as a leading provider of insight and intelligence and wisdom on this market as well. We speak to advisors and providers every single day. We're in a great position to do that. We aren't just a news house. Yes, that does fuel, a lot of the reason that people come to us in the first place. But I think we haven't made a big enough song and dance about all of the other assets that we can provide and do provide people.
Yeah. Questions are really hotting up. Keebs, it's lovely to see Keebs on. How you doing, Paul? I'll come back to your question in a moment, actually. But Neil's got a bit of a follow-up here. So, Neil, I think there's only one answer that Justin's going to give to this when I ask him, what do you think the best sources are for financial planners as opposed to IFAs? Can you think of any titles, Justin, that you would want them to read?
It's a good question. I hear there's one called Money Marketing out there that's
shite, mate. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because it has kind of specialized down the financial planning kind of world, as opposed to, let's say, more general firms that have got big mortgage practices and that kind of stuff. That's a different kind of game, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, our core audience will always be, financial plans. We do try and stay at that end of the market rather than talking for fundies, for mortgage advisors, for, the protection industry or whoever else. While we try and cover some stuff, we obviously can't do everything. So and it's also why we have to be a news site as well, because content for financial plans and IFAs is out there everywhere. Lee, half the stuff that they create for Octo and for people like NextGen and Illuminate and stuff like that, we're aware that they host a lot of things like blogs that we also might commission from people. So we can't take away from the fact that what we do differently and what we can specialize in is that we are journalists and we know how to break news. That's also part of when one of those other people knows how to do a Freedom of Information Act request or defend a legal claim for libel, then I will concede that we're on the same ground.
Yeah, journalism is just a different thing, and sometimes because we kind of cover stuff in weekly updates or in blogs, and then we write papers and all that kind of malarkey, we get classed as journalists sometimes, and I'm like, absolutely not. There's a proper skill in being a journalist. I mean, it's roughly similar to pulling the tablecloth off a table and leaving the glasses on it. It's not very hard, but no, there's tons goes into it, and
that is what I learned on my master's in doing journalism. Actually, that tablecloth trade it took me a year. It's a really long time.
Yeah, also drinking. He had to pass a bar on drinking to that. Pass a bar. John suggests the worst theme park ever, which is Financial Planning World. I don't think anybody wants to go there, John. Lee asks about editions and the frequency, because I guess, the site is basically, as well as all the things you're talking about from the news angle, it's a rolling news kind of operation now, I guess.
Yeah, in terms of kind of print edition, the way we decide to cut it is because I want to know when people are getting the magazine. Like if it's out every week, it's out every week. Yes, we do take the break over a couple of months in summer and a bit of mid-December through to mid-Jan, for example, because people aren't at the offices as much and things like that. But I still think keeping up the weekly is quite important. That's what we try and do. If the market's there, we'll keep doing that. I don't think you can kind of some people have transitioned well to fortnightly rather than weekly, but I'm not sure how much more you can add in a fortnightly than a weekly, because you go up in size, you need more stuff to fill it. It almost becomes self-defeating because you have to just churn out more content for it. People think it's, you can save time, but you can do deeper stuff if you have a fortnightly or a monthly rather than a weekly. But it ends up being a planning issue of what's going to stay relevant, what isn't. And all those pages have still got to be proofed and subbed and fact checked and all the rest of it. So in terms of the print, as long as we get ahead of stuff, and then weekly, I'd like to think is a good frequency for us.
That's cool. And I see Darren's offered up £2 a week
Awesome.
for that free publication. Darren, you might need to get some of your mates along. but that would probably work. So a couple of questions, and then I think we'll talk about actual kind of subjects rather than the media as a subject in just a wee moment. But James asks a really interesting question there about if financial journalism is entertainment or something else, and if so, what? And McQueen's pushing for a follow-up here because he's insatiable, and asking about social media, which is obviously I don't know if it's a source of heat or light or both or neither in our sector, but in our sector, has it been a force for good? Has debate been democratized, or do empty vessels make the most noise? And I've got something about that I'll share in a moment. But what do you think?
Sure. I'm going to take the entertainment one first. It's not, as you were saying, journalism is a different scale. It's about revealing new facts. It's about interpreting and attempting to hold people to account. I know that there's so many other things going on in publications that we have to do, but that's what everyone wants to be doing. Ideally, no one comes into one of these brands trying to be entertainers, right? You'd go to a gossip mag. You'd go to, some other publication. Financial advisors are great. Some of you have great personalities, but there's not a lot of entertaining stuff that I can say about discretionary management propositions on platform. Come on, as much as we try.
I've got a few stories.
It's also not what I think we should be doing, even if we could. RE social media. I think it's very good for crowdsourcing information. I think if we pick up on something within the market, we go, oh, actually, is this impacting a lot of advisors, or can someone tell me some more information on this? Let's put a little, call for input out, and that can often lead to really good things that go, oh, okay, yeah, this provider has messed up. Okay, now I can follow that up. That's a good story. But as a rule, overuse, bad.
Yeah. One of the things that we've kind of noticed, mainly through the social stuff, but also in the below the line comment sections, which have obviously been a bit of an issue for a while. And I've had some problems with those before, and I even may have had to threaten one publication with some legal action one time as a result of some stuff that was done there. And it's the noisy few. And that's the thing. So one of the things in the big annual research we do, you'd swear if you look at social and the moon howlers beneath the line, that XYZ subject was absolute priority for everybody, and that they hate everything and they've set fire to it all, watch it burn and start again. And actually, you survey 500-600 people, 500 firms anyway, and actually about 2/3 of them are fine. 70% of them are like, it's all right. So I'm not, sorry. No, I was going to say, and, squeaky wheel and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that goes back to a point I wanted to make as well about, so I'm amazed no one's mentioned it yet, about how we're always seen as too negative, or that we only write bad stories. We are a little bit of a mirror of what comes back to us. And when you meet advisors at conferences, and a lot of them, first thing they say is how tough it is to be an advisor now. However, if you look at the really big picture, there is so much positive stuff going on. Financial advice is a great profession to be in. I've never said anything otherwise. Basically, how I finish every single one of my leaders, like, this is awesome. I wish I'd have done this instead of journalism. And we do stuff. We did advice from the client's perspective last year, which is a whole range of videos and podcasts and testimonials from kind of real clients about what advice means to them, because no one really talks about it that much. And it's great positive stories, and that's kind of being picked up in a few other projects that I'm seeing about the place. So I also think it goes back to what our role as journalists is, rather than entertainers, content providers, what our unique skill is. Sometimes there's nasty stuff going on, and we should be the people to say that. I mean, a lot of people, the same people who go, oh, you only write negative stuff. If when I talk about how SJP removed its complaints data from its website, they'll be like, yeah, you should have said that. That's great. It's like, well, that's a negative story about the advice profession. Hang on.
Yeah, it's, it is tough. And also, like, as human beings, where, we look at car crashes as we drive by, right? and it is hard sometimes to just write, well, everything was okay today.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't. Yeah, we do like really good stories, but they also you have to realize that they also have to be interesting, you know, or new or different or something like. I would love to write about every single financial planner out there who's hired a new apprentice or given a bit to charity or whatever, but I get 5,000 of them to my inbox a day. It's not like I can pick between all of them in a way. But that doesn't mean that, again, we are a mirror. Send stuff through to me. I will look at it, and we would try and we absolutely do our best within the time that we have to make better. If you have good stories, do not be shy to share them. We want to hear everything that's going on, good and bad, because so much of the stuff that's kind of the public interest stuff that we do does come from people reporting it, yes, but a lot of the good stuff does as well. Otherwise, how are we going to know about it?
Yeah, one of the things that I know people sometimes ask, nobody has yet today, but I'll ask it on our behalf. And then we'll stop with the process stuff and go into some subjects, but with our last few minutes. But one of the criticisms I think people have in the sector is you hear the same voices a lot across titles, and I would know I'm a media tart like a lot of others, and so I'm one of those. And we kind of work quite hard at it. But if you're listening to this or watching it back and you think, do you know what, I'd love to be quoted in some stories, and I'm not a big provider with a PR team or any of that stuff. I'm just an advisor, not merely an advisor, but I'm not huge. And I'd love to kind of break in and share what I think. How do they go about that in the best way that works for your guys?
Be clear and concise on what, if you have an idea of something you want to write about, email one of us, email me, and we'll absolutely take a look at it. I do get the point about rotation of voices. So we signed up for something last year called the 50-50 project, where we collect data on a gender split between the people who we go to for comment. And that's actually helped focus our minds on saying, oh, actually, even though only about 2 in 10 advisors are women, we can still do better. And we've just kind of revised our columnists, our regular writers for the next year, because we do, we give people a year basically, and done stuff like set up Financial Advisor to Be, we're going to call it, which is like a section of the magazine where it's going to be people who are training to be advisors. So you would have never heard from them at all before, hopefully, that we managed to seek out. So I'm really trying to get fresh faces in there.
Brilliant. So let's, with the rest of our time, let's talk about stories and things that are going on. So it's pandemics and stuff aside, what are the stories that stick in your mind from 2020?
Yeah, the good news, basically. Everyone keeps pronouncing the death of the small advisor, but time and again, FCA stats come out, 90% of firms still five-man bands or fewer. Revenues ticked up, advice numbers up 3%. Awesome. Salaries, I know it's a dirty word, no one talks about it, but again, latest data that I saw only about a week ago is that a quarter of advisors now earning more than 100k total. I mean, that's great. No one's, we defend the right of the advisor to make money as much as the next man. So that's been really positive to see this year. I think one of the other major kind of ongoing stories that I've seen that's really warned me is kind of the amount of talk of financial well-being, of behavioural finance and things like that. I mean, cast my mind back when I first got into this, 5-6 years ago, no one would ever talk about hindsight bias or survivorship bias or the emotional value of money. And now everyone is, which is awesome, and long may that continue.
Brilliant. And if we look forward to themes that you think we might be looking back on this time next year, what do you think is going to be exciting or interesting or keep you guys busy next year?
Yeah, I can't wait to see where vertical integration takes us next, and kind of consolidation, because it's a bit of a pet project of mine, of every single consolidator claiming that there's zero incentive to put money in their in-house funds or platform, when I've seen your sale documents and categorically there is. These are the same people, by the way, who when I wanted to interview one of them about it, went that you can only speak to us if we can guarantee that coverage is positive. That does not strike me as culturally great.
Bravo.
So what else is going to come out in the woodwork? Probably quite a lot. The FCA lasted it in 2017. I wouldn't be surprised if it got around to another consolidator style review next year as part of its kind of, farmer progress and assessing suitability to review, because they're just the profit's just not there to sustain private equity. If you're looking for a 3 to 5 year time horizon and making kind of 30 to 50% on the flip, how does that sit with a 2-3 man band lifestyle financial planning business? I just think the culture clash is going to work its way out in the wash more than anything.
Yeah, and there's an interesting tension in there because firms have been working really, really hard to tidy up their books and get things repeatable and scalable and all that. And in a way, a lot of these consolidators would prefer if it was a basket case, so that there was a reason to move everything somewhere and then they could catch it. But if you've already, got a well-developed kit, a really good processes, and a decently well thought out technology proposition, there's not that much you can do, really.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of small advice firms that could certainly benefit from some more structure around them and a few layers of centralized management. But I was talking to an M&A broker the other day, and they were basically like, "Well, you're right. They're not going to buy people who they can't maybe sneak a bit more charge in somewhere, or that there has to be that they have to be able to defend why they change the model." And it's like, well, you're not just shoehorning in new change, then new proposition. Oh, well, we added different cash flow modeling or more extensive more regular annual reviews. So now you're ongoing 1 instead of 0.5. But and that is the situation we're unfortunately going to be looking at.
Yeah, those deferred payments are paid for by the clients. There's no magic money tree in any of this, one way or the other. I suppose we have quite a few people in chat asking about a couple of the stories of the day. So platforms up for sale and moving around and all that stuff. So I don't know how you feel about talking about specific stories.
Happy to. I think that Standard Life Aberdeen with a new man at the helm is clearly putting his foot down and asserting some authority on it. What for me is very interesting is essentially they've abandoned the almost $4 billion in funds that they were going to get from the Virgin Money deal, because Parmenion's no longer going to be the platform of choice for that. Now they've agreed to put it up for sale. Which, that is a lot of funds that were potentially going to go on there that now aren't. And if you're, there's still so much competition in platform land. You're in a bun fight. It seems a very bold move for me, for Standard Life Aberdeen, to say we do not want that distribution channel. Yeah, and to say that look at the kind of the main drives in the advice market at the moment. More people moving towards digital advice. Okay, Parmenion tick. More people outsourcing discretionary commissions, wanting to run kind of MPSs. Parmenion tick. It seems to sit in a nice, what I hear from advisors, in a nice space for the current trends. I mean, who's going to buy it? Again, another good question, because the people who would have had the money to buy it have already bought people or are still going through nasty migrations.
Yeah.
But again, is it going to be just another private equity one, and then charges start getting? I think we are going to see a lot more private equity interest in advice next year. Not all of it for good. I'm a bit skeptical on that.
PE guys are always lovely. Buy flowers for their mum and everything. So that was that one, and Nucleus people asking about as well. I mean, even apart from the specifics of those businesses, there's a lot more juice going on in that sector at the moment, isn't there? A lot more instability than there's been for a long time. Yeah,
when the one thing that people don't want out of platforms is a merry-go-round in ownership, and now suddenly we talked about it for ever since I've done this 5-6 years. Everyone going, oh, platforms going to consolidate. There's no room for little platforms, and now suddenly it seems like the second half of 2020 that's suddenly come true. And again, they're going to have to be bloody careful, given how a lot of the replatforming has gone historically, to make sure that those changes in ownerships don't have a knock-on effect on your advisors.
Yeah, and the thing with this, we often focus it through advisor firms and all that stuff, but you can't muck about with these businesses now. We're talking tens of billions of client assets, and it's got to be done right.
And I can't wait until advisors actually start clocking onto the kind of role that FNZ and GBST and IFDS and all of these people play. And last year, when I did my presentation to our company and a few others about what I was expected to see, I was like, well, why is no one looking at the giant concentration in platform tech? And now suddenly the CMA blocks a merger. I'm not saying I'm a genius, but that was a pretty prescient prediction, if I do say so myself.
Well done, you. All right, listen. 2 softball questions to finish up because we're at our time, and I don't want to take too much of your day up because you've got a story to cover on Nucleus. So these 2 softball questions both come from the chat, and one is kind of your proudest moment or something you've broken or something you've achieved, and also from the sector. In journalism, who do you look up to or have you looked up to in the past?
Sure. My first ever cover story as editor was one of the first proper deep dives into what was going on in DB transfers. So I basically revealed 3 different advice firms that all had their permissions banned by the regulator, but more importantly, we're all working with the same introducer firm who was also happened to have the same directors as the overseas funds listed in Mauritius that the funds were going into. One of the directors of the introducer firm was also a director at Leeds Football Club. One of them was a guy who got done by the insolvency service for hiding money, literally in gold bullion. You could not have written this story any better. They unsurprisingly attempted to sue us for that, which means that it was a good story. Proudest, who I kind of look up to in the sector. I still think, and again, it's a premium product. You pay a lot for it, but the FT has really gone from strength to strength in the last few years. Like, just look at what they did with like Wirecard and Dan McCrum's piece on that. That is investigative journalism of the highest order.
Yeah. That's brilliant. And our very last question from our own Mark Locke. On average daily, how often do you have to try to convince people your name really, really is Justin Cash?
I've done the numbers.
Are you actually Justin Cash?
It's 6.7. That's the out of time.
6.7, and that's great. Well, we'll leave it there, Justin. That was awesome. Thank you. Time's absolutely flown by. And I hope, people accuse the media of being negative about it, and maybe that's true, the reflection, as you say, of what's out there. But also people are quite negative kind of on the media, and I think if you're open to constructive engagement, then if you want it to be different, then you can make it different, get involved. So thank you very much. Thanks to everybody for coming on once again, and have a great week. We will see you next week for our last roundup of the year, and wish you all the best. Thanks once again. Landcat out.